So you'll probably have to accept the recording. All right, and so as we enter into this tensegrity practice, I want to start by doing something that's called the radiant breath. It's something we'll come back to. I have this beautiful little prop here to aid in that. And so if you can just find a comfortable seat for the time being, we'll move to our mats here in a moment if you're not there already. You might find some wiggle side to side, maybe some movement of the head and neck, maybe of the shoulders. It can feel nice to maybe look around and just notice your surroundings. And maybe it feels nice to close your eyes altogether or to direct your gaze downward. I will have a visual on the screen here in a moment that you might want to orient to, but we can take a couple moments first to just notice your breath as it already is. Noticing where you feel the inhale and the exhale. Noticing how deep your breath is, how fast or slow, how smooth or ragged. You might notice how erect your spine is. Are you leaning forward or backward? Are you rounding or sitting tall? Is there any adjustment that you can make for the breath to be felt a little more deeply in the abdomen? Maybe for the breath to come a little bit easier. And as we focus on this breath, I'm going to offer this visual as an opportunity to maybe sync your breath up with the inhale as this ball expands. And the exhale as it contracts. And trying to, as you maybe sync up with this, and maybe you don't, that's fine too. But trying to focus on the transitions between every inhale and exhale. How can those become a little bit smoother? Can you feel the breath as it expands in the front and the back sides of the body on every inhale? Can you feel it as it expands side to side through the ribs on every inhale? Can you feel it as it expands top to bottom? And finally, is there a way to hold awareness of all of those different directions, front to back, side to side, top to bottom, like a balloon within your chest? Can you feel the breath expand in 6 directions and evenly contract from those same directions? This is what we will refer to as the radiant breath. This very conscious, multi-directional expansion and contraction. We'll take one more full cycle of it here. And then we can prepare to transition to our mats if you're not there already. And if you are there, you just need to find a lying down position. So lying on your back. You might start by placing your prop beneath your hips. And as with all prop use, this is just an experiment. So you might try it and then say, no, you might change the height of it. But for now, we can lie on our backs, plant the feet, knees are bent up toward the ceiling. The hands can rest wherever they feel best, whether that's down at the sides, out to a T, on the belly. The eyes can be closed or maybe downcast, softened gaze in some way. And we'll return to that radiant breath. So in a different orientation, can we feel that same full expansion and contraction? And as we're experiencing that breath, we can also bring awareness to the 3 convex curves on the backside of the body. There's the bowl of the pelvis. There is the shoulder girdle and the upper ribs. And there's also the backside of the head. And as we notice these 3 areas, we might think of them becoming heavier toward the mat. And as I start to offer options for movement, please know that returning to this place of stillness, maybe to focus on the radiant breath, is always an option. And it is of equal value as any of the other options I will offer. If right now finding a little bit of movement sounds good to you, then you might draw your knees up, lifting your feet from the mat. And we can straighten the legs any amount overhead, pointing and flexing the toes, maybe circling out the ankles. And then we can return the legs to a bend. And from here, we'll straighten the legs out any amount and bring them back in. So we're just reaching the toes toward the front edge of the mat and then drawing the knees back in. This motion can be big or it can be little. It can be something where maybe you extend far enough that you feel it create some heat in your core, or it can be something that's very isolated into the hips. And so the motion might be a little bit smaller in that way. It can be fast or slow. You might link it to your breath, maybe 1 breath per movement, or maybe multiple breaths per movement, or multiple movements per breath. Wherever you are, bring awareness back to those 3 curves on the backside of the body: the pelvis, the upper ribs and shoulders, and the back of the head. Can those places become just a little bit heavier on the mat? And if it feels of interest to you to add in some arm motion, we might experiment with that as well. Here it would be drawing hands toward each other at heart center, keeping them there while the knees draw in, and then as the legs extend, the arms extend overhead. So we're simultaneously reaching away and then in. Kind of like that first motion of a sun salutation, when we reach up, extending through the body. And you might just notice if there are any sounds that your body is making. Pops or crunches. I have some Rice Krispies in my knees, and so they're pretty vocal sometimes. And sometimes the body just needs to make some noises, and it doesn't mean anything. It's not good or bad. It's just the body, working through its thing. You might experiment with befriending that noise, being okay with it. Or you might experiment with altering the range of motion in some way to maybe bring a little more silence into the movement. And then commit to whatever one feels better to you. And if at any point you can choose to rest, and if you are moving or resting, you might continue for 3, 2, and 1. We'll bring the feet back down to the mat, let the hands rest. Take a moment to return to that radiant breath. This next motion, I prefer to not have my hips elevated for. I think having them lower makes it a little bit easier for me, but you can always try it elevated and then make a decision later if that feels better to you. You can, of course, always choose to rest, but if you would like to add in another set of movement, we'll bring the knees back up and bring the shins up as well. So maybe we're kind of at like a 90-degree. The arms can reach out to the sides, palms face down in a T. And from here, we're going to think of the knees drawing a sort of arc. So the knees come up toward the left armpit, away as they come through middle, and then they come up toward the right armpit. So it's kind of like they're drawing the smile of a smiley face or something. And again, this motion can be big or little. And you might just experiment. What if I make this bigger? What if I make this littler? You might notice if there's any adjustment you can make to invite a little more ease into this oscillation. Might be something as simple as softening through your jaw or changing your point of focus if you're staring at the ceiling, or opening or closing your eyes in a way that feels more supportive. We can again think of those three curves on the back side of the body and try to bring a little more weight into those areas, noticing how that affects this movement. Now, if you want to add the arms into this movement, we'll act like we're holding a big beach ball. So the fingers don't quite touch. And the knees, we can picture, are kind of moving around the curve of the beach ball in our arms. And the arms are going to move in the opposite direction as the knees. So we have a little bit of a twist coming into the body. And it might take some time to find a rhythm here, to find some coordination. There might not be coordination. It might be kind of clunky the whole time. That's totally normal and fine. And if you're liking some movement and you want to add another, or maybe you didn't add the arms, but adding a movement elsewhere sounds appealing, we can add in a roll of the head. And the head will roll in the same direction as the knees. So when the knees are to the right, we'll look to the right. Knees go left, we look left. Some people really enjoy adding a little straightening of the legs as the knees come up toward the armpit. Remembering again that you can make this motion as fast or as slow as you want to. And you can choose what you do with your breath. You might pause someplace, or you might alter the movement in a way that feels supportive to your body. Some people like keeping the legs a little bit straight the whole time. You might experiment with that. And wherever you are, if you are resting or moving, we might stay here for 3, maybe for 2. And 1, we can gently soften out of this. Take a breath to just reorient. Finding that stillness after the movement can be just as nourishing as finding the movement. And potentially elevating the hips or leaving them on the mat, whatever feels best to you in this moment. We can bring the knees back in. And then this time we're going to interlace the fingers at the base of the skull, drawing the elbows toward each other. We're going to lift the shoulders up, contracting on the front side of the body here. We might even add just the slightest pressure on the back side of the head to stretch through the back side of the neck. And then from here, let's keep the right leg up and lower the left foot down to the mat. With the right leg crunched in, take one cycle of breath. On your exhale, straighten that leg out. It can be directly above the hip. It can be reaching lower toward the mat. You might experiment with a couple different locations. We'll keep the shoulders lifted, the hands supporting the head, that leg extended for just a moment. Then go ahead and plant the right foot, crunch the left knee in. Here for just a breath. Exhale to straighten that leg out. Again, wherever you want it to be, high or low. And go ahead and bring that foot in. From here, we can let the head rest back onto the mat, releasing the hands. The hands can come down to the abdomen if that feels okay. If you'd rather have them out at the sides, that's also fine. Something that can be interesting to explore here is to bring the fingertips underneath the ribs, kind of massaging that skin, and that it can be low under the ribs or higher up toward the sternum, whatever feels best to you. And we're going to keep the left foot planted and reach the right leg up. And from here, we'll lower the right leg any amount and lift it. And again, this can be fast or slow. We can keep a little softness in that leg to maybe soften through some of the bigger muscle areas. It can be nice to get some momentum here. A lot of times in empowerment flow, you'll hear me cue to eliminate momentum, to try to take the whole motion with control. But in this type of practice, momentum can be beneficial. It can help us to keep those bigger muscle groups more offline. It can be fast or slow, big or little movement. Stay here maybe for 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and lift that leg up. Maybe take a little bit of a stretch of it. And then bend the knee, plant that foot. The left leg can extend into the air. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Lifting and lowering. Again, maybe using momentum, maybe not. Maybe going big with movement, maybe finding littler movement. You might notice some loosening under your fingers by now. And it's again an opportunity to check in with the backside of the body, those 3 curves. Can we isolate this movement further into the left hip by growing a little bit heavier in those curves on the backside of the body? And we might continue for 3 or 2 and for 1. Let's go ahead and bring that left foot down. We'll draw the knees back in toward the chest. And again, we'll bring the hands behind the head. From here, we'll find that position we found last time of crunching in, but this time we're going to find an oscillation here. So the legs extend and the head lowers, and then the legs draw in as the head lifts. So this is maybe a movement that many of us have encountered as a crunch, is maybe the term we've been given in like a fitness class. Keep in mind that our goal here isn't just to work the core, it's to experience the movement throughout the wholeness of the body. So the legs might go really straight, they might just go straight when we lift up, they might stay very bent. The motion might be quite small. We might play with making it as quiet and small of a movement as we can. We might make it big and dramatic. It's really, sorry, my low back keeps lifting off the mat. I don't know if you can hear that. It's making kind of funny noises right now. But it's something that you can think of here is syncing your breath to this movement might feel a little more necessary than some of the other movements we've done. So exhaling as you contract might feel really supportive. And if, like me, you have your low back lifting off of the mat and then pressing back down, you might experiment with keeping the low back more planted on the mat and changing the movement to accommodate that. We might continue for 3, maybe for 2, and for 1. Go ahead and straighten out your legs on the mat this time. Take a full body stretch, inhaling and exhaling. For this next one, we're going to roll onto the right side. And if you want to roll to your right in a way that you can see the screen, that might be helpful. On your right side, the knees can be bent in. The right hand might support the right side of the head, or we can let the right ear rest on just a straightened right arm. Either option is totally fine. What we're going to do from here, though, is lift this left leg, plant the toes behind us, kind of thinking as high up as they can go behind us, and reach out of that knee, maybe feeling a little bit of a stretching sensation on the front side of that hip. And then from there, we can plant the foot to where it can just more comfortably settle on the mat. The right leg is bent, and we're going to think of a line of energy from the inner right knee to the left armpit. So it's going to lift at kind of this diagonal. And the leg can be as straight or as bent as you want it to be. The lift can be as high or as low as you want it to be. This time we're not on our back, but we can think of the entire right side of the body and the left foot. How heavy can we become in those areas? Now, if you'd like to add in an arm movement here, what we'll do is we'll open the arm as the right leg is lowered. So let the right leg settle on the mat, open the left elbow back, and then lift the right leg as the left fingertips cross in front. Open and close. Open and close. Again, fast or slow, with breath, without breath. Whatever you decide to do, just decide to do it on purpose. And know that you can always make changes throughout. Just because you start one way doesn't mean that you need to continue that way throughout the entirety of it. And we might continue here for 3, 2, 1. Lower the right leg down. Resettle if you want to have your head supported on your hand or your head on your arm, either is fine. We'll bring the left foot atop the right and then lift it from there. And so we have kind of a little bit of a poised balance here with our left leg. And what we're going to think of doing here is contracting on the side of that hip. So we'll draw the knee up toward the left shoulder and then back down to starting. Toward the shoulder and away. And again, going at whatever pace feels good to you. This one, sometimes people enjoy straightening the leg when it comes in and then bending as it goes back down. Check back in with the right side of your body. Is it heavy? Could it be heavier? Is there any change or adjustment you can make for this to feel more supportive to you? Remember that you can choose to alter at any time, including choosing to transition to a period of rest. And if you're still moving, we might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Step that left foot behind you one more time. Get one more stretch through that hip flexor. And then from here, we're going to go to the other side. For me, I'm going to do a full flip just so I'm still facing the camera. I'm not talking to a wall. But for you, you might just be able to roll right over and go to your other side that way. So we'll start by bending the knees and stepping the right toes up behind us and then pressing out of that right knee, finding a little bit of a stretch. From here, we can bring the the right foot onto the mat anywhere where it feels a little more stable. And then this is where we have that line of energy from the right armpit to the left inner knee. So we can lift on that diagonal. This time, really consider the left side of the body and how it could be heavier here. How that maybe affects the movement. And then if you would like to add in the arm, it'll be the right arm we add in. We'll wait till the left leg is on the mat and we'll open the right arm back. And then we'll close in toward each other and then spread apart. Cross toward center and away, toward and away. Reestablish that heaviness through the zones of the body that are touching the mat. Let that be your place of stability here. And if you want to transition into rest, know that that is always available and is just as valuable of an option as choosing to stay with movement. If you are still moving, we might continue this for 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and lower the left leg. This time, we'll step the right foot atop the left. And then we'll lift that foot up. So we're kind of poised midair. And then we'll focus on that side contraction, bringing the knee in toward the shoulder and away, toward and away. And again, this is an opportunity to make a choice for yourself. It doesn't need to be the same on each side. If something different arises on one side, then that side might need something else. If you want to add in that kick straight at the top, that can be something to play with. If you want to alter the pace or your breath in any way. And we might continue this for 3, 2, 1. Step those right toes behind you for one more stretch through that hip flexor. Might feel like it could use it more after that movement we just did. And then eventually we'll roll onto our backs. And rolling onto your back, it might be another good opportunity to have that blanket beneath your hips. From here, we have options for arms. They can be out to the sides. They can be on the belly. Another option is to have the arms overhead, fingertips tented above the head. We're gonna lift the legs up and we're gonna straighten one up and one down. So it's almost like running is what we can think of here. We're just scissoring the legs back and forth. And this is always a place where people might notice noises. It's a pretty common place to hear noises in the body and the hips. And again, that can be an invitation to observe the noise and just to get to know it a little bit more. It can also be an invitation to get to know the range of motion and see, is there a different range of motion where that noise isn't present or that sensation isn't present? And is that more enjoyable for your body? Maybe, maybe not. Now, if you would like to add the arms into this in a way of motion, we'll bring the arms into, I like to hold my hands in kind of loose fists, and we'll move opposite arm with opposite leg. So it's like cross-country skiing. So when the left leg is down, right arm is down, left arm is up. And then you just think everything switches if it's near or far. And we just find that cross-country skiing movement. Bring awareness back to those curves on the backside of the body. Can they grow a little bit heavier? Does it feel better to have this motion quicker or slower? And there's one more option for some added movement here. It's with the head. So if you're interested in that, we'll roll the head again. This time it will be to look over the top arm. So whichever arm is closest to the face, we'll turn and we'll look toward that arm. Keeping in mind that we might actually keep the eyes open and look, or we might choose to have the eyes closed and roll the head in that way. We might find stillness and rest. We might return to that radiant breath. Or we might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead, release down to the mat. Take a couple breaths here, a couple moments to settle back in. And settling into the stillness might feel like an invitation to stay in the stillness. If you would like to experiment with the other option, it would be some movement. We'll bend the knees again. Now this one is going to be similar to some that we've done, where we straighten one leg out low, but the other leg, instead of being planted, is drawn into the chest. And we just keep doing that. Now this doesn't need to be low. It can be right above the hip sockets where we're straightening and bending. It can be at a 45 degree. It can be literally anywhere. We're just alternating, straightening, and bending. One thing that sometimes feels soothing here and that I want to offer as an invitation is to rub your hands together, creating a little bit of warmth. And it might feel nice to place those warm hands over your eyes. And the eyes can be open or closed beneath the hands. Might feel nice to stay there. Wherever you are, you might stay there for 3, 2, and 1. Let's lower the feet down on the mat. Let the knees knock in toward each other. Option to close the eyes and take a couple of breaths here. As you feel ready, the knees can draw in toward the chest, and we'll bring the hands to the knees. We can draw them in toward us, and then we'll pull the knees away from each other, away from us, and back toward one another. So we're kind of just drawing these 2 circles with the knees. And we can always switch direction if that feels nice in the body. We might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Let's go ahead and plant the feet. Let everything soften into the mat. We'll take a couple breaths here before transitioning. So allow these breaths to be nourishing. You might close your eyes, you might have them open. If you'd like to stay in this moment of stillness, please feel free to. If you'd like to add a little bit of movement, this will be our last one that's super specific to the legs. And we will straighten the legs up and then bend them. Option to touch the floor with the feet and then straighten back up any amount. And the feet don't need to touch the floor. We can straighten and bend, keeping the feet at a float as well. Again, choose a pace intentionally, whether it be quick or slow. Choose a range of motion intentionally, whether it be a large or small range of motion. Notice those curves on the backside of the body. The heavier they get, the more this movement becomes isolated. And we might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Let's all extend our legs up overhead. And from here, we'll flex the toes back and open the legs into any form of a straddle. This can be a narrow straddle, or it can be a more passive one where you let the legs kind of fall open as wide as they want. It's whatever feels supported to you. And keep in mind, it might feel better to eliminate the legs from this altogether and plant them on the mat. That's also a perfectly fine option. Wherever you find yourself, this one is going to be focused a little bit more on the hands and the arms. We can reach the arms up above us and hold thumb and index finger toward each other. So you're making these 2 circles with your hands. And we'll draw the circles to touch above the face. And then we'll lower the hands out to the sides, bringing palms face up. And then circles touch. And then the backs of the hands to the floor. Circles touch, backs of hands to the floor. And this can be fast or slow. It can be really nice here to Stare straight up above you and expand your peripheral vision, trying to see how far out to your sides you can watch your hands. Is there a point where you no longer see them? Maybe you notice other things in your peripheral vision aside from your hands, like furniture, objects in the room, certain colors. We can continue this, or we can choose to stop it at any time. You can also become aware of any noises we might be hearing in the arms. This might go on for 3, 2, 1. Let's bring the feet down to the mat. Let the arms rest at your sides for a moment. With the feet still planted, knees can knock in toward each other. That might feel extra supportive. We'll bring the palms together up above us. And this next motion is going to be to reach the arms behind and then to reach them down toward the legs. Behind the head and toward the legs. So the palms stay touching and we keep the arms as straight as we're able, not forcing it, of course. And we're finding just this different range of motion for the arms, for the shoulders. Again, let the backside of the body be heavy. Let this movement come at a pace that feels good to you. And if you would like to skip out on this movement and rest for a moment, maybe focusing on that radiant breath, please feel free to do so. We might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Let the arms come down to the sides. Notice how it feels to find some stillness. From here, we have the option to keep the hips grounded and to keep this just in the arms, which is a perfectly good option. We also have an option to press into the feet and lift the hips in a bridge pose. Now this bridge pose, if you do choose to find it, it won't be your maximum bridge where you lift your hips as high as you can. We'll keep the hips a little bit lower and focus on really tucking the tail here so that you feel that lengthening of the low back. And so if you choose to find the bridge, we're keeping it a little lower, keeping that tailbone tucked. No matter where you are, check that the weight distribution in your feet is pretty even between all 4 corners of each foot. We can return thumb and index finger toward each other. And we're going to bring the right arm up and the left arm up. And then we're just going to lower the right arm out to the side, bring it back through center, and then lower the left arm. Lift it back up, and then right. So it reminds me of those toys that were, for some reason, on a bunch of desks in like the 80s and 90s, where those balls hung from like fishing filament, and you'd move one ball and it would transfer the energy through all the other ones and move the other one. If you moved 2 balls, it would displace 2 on the other side, and so on. And so we're kind of just doing that with our arms here. One option is to stare up ahead, just above you, and watch the movement through your peripheral vision. Another option is to add in a rolling of the head, watching the arm that lowers, rolling the head that direction and watching it back up, and then switching to the other arm, and so on. At any point, you can always choose to eliminate the bridge if you're in the bridge, or readjust in any way. At any point you can change the pace. No matter where you are, whatever points of your body are in contact with the mat, allow them to become heavy. Our shoulders are definitely in contact. Your pelvis may or may not be. Your feet are. Even while the head is moving, it can be heavy. And we might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Let's go ahead and lower the hips if they were lifted. Let the arms rest. Take a breath here. For this next one, we'll keep the hips lowered. We'll still hold thumb and index finger toward each other, and we'll think of basically drawing, if we were holding between our thumb and index finger pencils, drawing an oval on the ceiling so that those fingers always point up. Pinkies touch down toward our legs, and then the circles touch up overhead. So essentially, we're finding some rotation in the shoulders. And the pinkies might not quite touch, and the circles might not quite touch. It doesn't need to actually be a full oval, but we're just working in that direction. Keeping the arms mostly straight as we do this. There might be a little bend in the elbows from time to time. You might continue for 3, 2, and 1. Let's go ahead and release the arms. You can move the prop out from under you if you were on the prop. Draw the knees into the chest, grab the back sides of the legs. From here, we're gonna rock our way up to a seat. This can be fast or slow. Again, just making your way up eventually. Always, you can use the support of the hands as well. And from here, we only have a couple more movements that we're going to do. So we'll start with one that's really close to where we're at. This is our boat pose movement. So the hands can grab on the back sides of the legs, and we can really create a proud chest here, drawing shoulders toward each other on the back side of the body and sitting tall. It might take some time to find that space where we feel a little bit of balance. From here, we have the option to stay right here. We also have the option to find some movement, maybe lowering and lifting, but keeping the hands and legs in contact with each other. Again, at whatever pace feels supported in your body. You also have the option to release the grip and to lower and lift without that contact. I find it helpful to have my inner legs touching each other as much as possible. And we might continue for 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and release out of this. We'll rock over to hands and knees. This final movement, it might feel nice to have something under your knees. It's essentially going to be a modified vinyasa. So we can keep the knees a little bit wide, big toes toward each other, and crawl the hands out long. Let there be enough space between them for the body to pull through. We'll start in this child's pose, and then lifting the head and looking forward, we'll pull ourselves up almost through this tabletop and then land the pelvis, bending the arms any amount and finding a cobra pose. And then again, we'll rock back, child's form, and forward, pelvis lands, cobra. And the cobra might be a little different than you're used to. The knees are probably a little bit further apart because we're coming from a child's pose. You could also choose to have the knees closer toward each other, having a narrow child's pose. And then rock forward into a cobra from there. That might feel better. Let this be an intentional movement. If any part of it feels compromising, if any part of it feels unsafe in your body, then really slow down. You might avoid that part altogether, or you might think, how can this feel supported in my body? What does my body naturally want to do as I'm making that movement for it to feel a little bit better? This might be linked with breath. It might not. You can really roll forward, exaggerating the curves of the spine as well, and then really draw the hips back, making this kind of a spinal wave. Or you can make the movement a little bit smaller. Maybe not finding your deepest depth in any one place. And we might continue this for 3, 2, and 1. Let's all come back to any seated posture. That might mean you are seated on the heels. It might mean seated on your blanket or your prop. Might be legs extended, legs crossed. As you settle into that seat, you might scan through your body, noticing any sensation that arises or that is present. Maybe the temperature of your skin, pace of your heartbeat, the quality of your breath. You might take a moment to consider how the experience was of this past hour, noting what came up, and determining what you want to carry with you into the rest of this evening, and what you'd rather just leave right here on the mat. On an inhale, if it is a symbol that's of meaning to you, we can reach the arms out to the sides and up, palms coming together overhead. And we can let those hands come down to heart center. Here, I would invite you to send a little note of gratitude to your body for being here through all this movement and through everything that we do each and every day. And also a note of gratitude to yourself for taking time to care for your body, to be curious about movement, and to provide nourishment in whatever ways you can. Namaste.